James Thurber rarely wrote about politics per se, and amazingly, he published something 80 years ago next month that could have been pulled from this week's headlines. It not only shows that the House of Representatives was pretty much the same then as it is now, but also that big banking was pretty much the same then as it is now, and unbelievably, that ship captains were pretty much the same then as they are now. Tonight, I'm reading from People Have More Fun Than Anybody, a collection of Thurber's magazine pieces, and this originally appeared in the New Yorker in 1932, the February 13th issue, to be precise. Thoughts from Mr. Tierney by James Thurber. Last Monday, when I was just sitting around without a constructive or helpful thought in my head, up popped a communication from my representative in Congress, the Honorable William L. Tierney, like myself, an old Connecticutian of a fine family. If it hadn't been for his speech, it was a speech he sent me, I should have spent the day flipping over the pages of a photoplay magazine and leering at the pictures of the lady stars. Mr. Tierney's speech, however, gave me something to think about, and also stirred up an idea or two of my own, which may be of help to Mr. Tierney and to Congress, and indirectly to the millions of Americans whose happiness, the gentleman from Connecticut points out, is handicapped by paralysis. Mr. Tierney's speech is the first speech I have read in a long time. Ordinarily, I pay no attention to what goes on in Congress until one of the representatives calls another one a cockeyed so-and-so, and the two go for each other right on the floor. That, it seems to me, is something. Speeches, as a rule, are nothing. Mr. Tierney's, however, has a number of interesting points. It takes only about 15 minutes to read, and he gets immediately into what he has to say without any preamble. He starts right off. Mr. Chairman, I desire to make a few observations in support of the Reconstruction Finance Corporation bill, now reported out of my Committee on Banking and Currency under the new title of A Bill to Provide Financial Facilities for Financial Institutions to Aid in Financing Agriculture, Commerce, and Industry and for Other Purposes. Here was something which I saw at a glance it was my duty as a citizen to grasp. It gave me the guilty realization that for months I have been letting finance bills go along without even knowing that their titles had been changed. That kind of laxity is bound to let a citizen in for trouble. Imagine at a dinner party saying something to the lovely lady on your right about the Reconstruction Finance Corporation bill, only to have her come back after a peal of cold and silvery laughter with the withering question, "Are you perhaps trying to say the bill to provide financial facilities for financial institutions to aid in financing agriculture, commerce, and industry and for other purposes?" You might weather such a withering, but I couldn't. For when I am embarrassed at dinner parties, the front of my shirt begins to rise, and when I push it down, it goes plop, then comes right up again, with the result that I have to hold it down with both hands and thus get nothing to eat. The body of Mr. Tierney's speech was rather depressing for Monday reading, but as a citizen, I felt I ought to go ahead with it. It was mostly about the bad shape everything is in, particularly the banks. Mr. Tierney pointed out that the banks are under stress and peril owing to war conditions. While not at war, he said, our financial institutions are under a like pressure and peril. In fact, we are at war. This reasoning, while colorful, is, it seems to me, misleading and likely to cause people to enlist, to kiss each other goodbye, to compose march songs, and to go around bragging that they won the Depression. I don't see that any good can come from twisting things around so that it appears the banks have got us into war. It would have been simpler and more convincing to get up a swell simile about banks and ships, because after all, they both go down in much the same way, with treasure on board, and are not heard of again, except possibly as derelicts drifting around a lonely sea, or standing empty and forlorn at the corner of Fifth Avenue in some cross street. Had my representative taken this slant, he could have touched on another idea which the bank ship simile calls up. That is, why doesn't the president of a bank go down with his bank the way the skipper goes down with his ship? Certainly there is nothing one can think of that a bank president could do if he didn't have a bank. He could ride a horse in Central Park for a while, but not forever. He could sit around his club forever, of course, but that would be mortifying with nobody to order around but waiters. It'd be much better for him simply to go down with his bank. Of course, it would be harder in a way for a banker to go down with his bank than for a captain to go down with his ship. For when a bank closes, the bank building itself is at the disadvantage of still being where it was. In this connection, I would offer the suggestion that when a bank closes and all the clerks and tellers and vice presidents leave and the light and the heat is turned off and the charwoman come no more to fill the water coolers. The president just stay in the old abandoned building alone. This would give the city something of the fascination and mystery of the sea. It would build up legends, and we need legends. For years, it would be rumored to say that President Hotchkiss Gay Zegefeld of the 31st National, who went down with his bank in 1929, was still to be seen on moonlit nights, prowling around the inside of the old building. He would become known as the Prowling Dutchman, and mothers would hush their children to sleep with tales of his eerie flittings about in the tellers' cages. This, however, is getting away from Mr. Tierney's speech, in which, on page 3, he says what seems to me another unfortunate thing, namely that about $1 billion in currency is now out of circulation and between the mattresses. $1 billion tucked away under the bedclothes of the nation? What kind of tip is that to give to the desperately hard-up citizens of this country? It is one thing to spend years and years becoming a fake butler in order to get at the drawing room safe. Only your inveterate criminal does that. But it is another to pop into a bedroom, pull up a mattress, and get away with a roll of bills. Anybody could do that. And thousands of people probably will. Mark my words, Tierney. That tip of yours is going to lead to a wave of second-story work, sending them mysterious theater tickets to get people away from home, catcalling and cries for help in the backyard to get people out of bed, fake fires, bedroom farces, and pernicious harlequinade generally. One thing in Mr. Tierney's speech toward the end is calculated to give me hope in case I ever want to run for Congress. I can never remember names or faces, a misfortune which is intensified by the fact that I am always sure I have met everybody I see. Mr. Tierney shows that weakness of memory about names in Congress. In referring to an eminent gentleman who testified in a Senate hearing, he says he thinks it was either Mr. Ecker, the president of the Metropolitan Life Insurance Company, or Mr. Morgan Brainerd, president of the Aetna Insurance Company of Hartford. If that's as close as you have to come, we could be a congressman right now. Of course, this uncertainty of Mr. Tierney's, while comforting to a would-be congressman, is rather disconcerting to an earnest-minded constituent trying to find out what conditions really are. Maybe, for example, the $1 billion isn't under the mattress after all, but behind the print of Rosa Bonheur's The Horse Fair in the front hall. I mean, I can't be ransacking the whole house. Thoughts from Mr. Tierney by James Thurber. Editor's note, 9 months after that article was written in 1932, Congressman Tierney was not reelected. I'm Keith Olbermann. See you tomorrow night at 6:30 Eastern for our live coverage of the South Carolina Republican primary. Good night and good luck.